Welcome everyone. Welcome to the fourth and the last week of Saltbox. We are wrapping it up with our little local number here. 2024 Early Mountain Five Forks is what we have today. It's a twist cap. It should be the last bottle in your box. Yeah, that's what we got. Just a few announcements before we get into the wine. You might have just heard me talking about it to Sam and Annie, but I am going to Spain in 2 weeks to do my annual cycling ride. And I know many of you have already donated, and I really appreciate you guys' donations. But I am only like $850 away from completing my fundraiser. So this is my shameless self-promotion to ask for a belated birthday drink in the form of a donation. Help me finish out my fundraising before my birth month is up. So yeah, the link is right there in the chat box if you like to buy me a belated birthday drink. But otherwise, it's all good too. Next Tuesday is the pickup and a delivery date. So know that new one's going to start it. Just so you know, I haven't decided yet, but so there are 5 Wednesdays next month. So one of the Wednesdays we're going to take a break. Usually we take a break at the end. So that's what land on the 30th. But the climate ride, the cycling ride starts on the 7th. So that 9 falls right during the ride. So either I'm going to take that week off, or I may send out a recording for that. So I haven't really fully decided yet. So I will keep you updated. But know that either the 9th is going to be a recording, or we're going to take a break in the middle of the month rather than at the end of the month, which is usually what we do. So just giving you a heads up. But you will obviously get an email outlining all of that next week. But yeah, just know that next Tuesday is a pickup and a delivery day. And in case you have not been told, the next month theme is going to be Abruzzo, which is a southern Italy. But I should really, and I'm doing something that I've never done before, which is I am actually featuring only one producer. So all 4 bottles next month is produced by one producer from Abruzzo. But it's 4 different grape varieties from Abruzzo. It's just that, yeah, it was her wines were so head and shoulders above everybody else's wine. Like usually, if they're somewhat close, sometimes I even put in wines that I maybe like a little bit less, just for programmatic reasons, just to have different varieties and feature and tell different side of stories and different producer profiles. But with this month, it's just that her wines were so much better than everything else that I've tasted. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. So we're only going to talk about one producer next month, but I think it's actually going to be fun to, because, there's going to be a similar style, similar production, but we're really going to be able to see the difference between these kind of 4 indigenous varieties of Abruzzo. So, which is super cool. So that's that. Any questions about any of that before we get into the tasting? Cool. Hearing none, in case you're just joining us now, we're tasting this guy today. 2024 Early Mountain Five Forks is what we got today, the Virginia white wine. It's been a while since we've featured Early Mountain, but here we are. All right. I assume that we're going to start with a map, but I assume that I don't need to show you US map. You all know where Virginia is. Here we are in District of Columbia, right? So this is Virginia. In case you're wondering, there are 8 different AVAs, American Viticulture areas in Virginia. And this is kind of what it looks like. Shenandoah Valley probably being the most, I don't know actually it's the most well-known, but I actually think it's the most prized AVA of them all. Rocky Knob is quite interesting. There's a little It's a tiny little thing. It's a high elevation kind of limestone sites that happen here, which is super interesting. Ben Jordan, which is, we'll talk about Ben in a second, but he's eyeing this area to grow some Riesling here, which is interesting. But yeah, so Monticello, obviously, right around Thomas Jefferson's house. It doesn't show on this map, but where we are is kind of like right around here. So Charlottesville is right around here. Where we are is about 45 minutes north of Charlottesville in a town called Madison, Virginia, in Madison County is where we are today. All these different areas, as you can imagine, pretty widely spread across the state of Virginia, one all the way from the eastern shore, as well as in the Shenandoah Valley. You can imagine there are different geological types, as well as many different macro climates that happen here. But in general, you guys are all familiar with the DC climate. It gets quite warm in the summertime. It is humid. So that humidity is always a threat. In fact, farming completely organic is quite difficult. It's really challenging here. So, but where we are, particularly here in Madison, Virginia, and then the Early Mountain also has their own vineyards, but they also purchase fruits from different vineyards they work with. And some of it hints into Shenandoah as well. Which does get a little bit cooler because of the elevation that happens here. But know that in general, what we're talking about is a pretty hot, pretty humid area is where we are. What's interesting in terms of the wine, or how it fits into this month's theme, salt box, is I actually think, initially this wine started out as this idea that certain varieties, and I think it is true, certain varieties really express themselves, or they are more prone to express the salinity better. And I've never heard that idea before. Certain grape varieties are more salty or saltier than others. And that's kind of how this all started. And we'll talk more about how that happens, why certain varieties are more prone to expressing itself as a saline. But I mean, as you can look at it, I mean, obviously besides the Virginia Eastern Shore, but that's now nowhere near where we are. This is nowhere near the ocean, right? We're way inland. The soil type here is not particularly prone to expressing minerality. There are pockets, right? Rocky Knob that I was talking about, there's a limestone-rich kind of a soil that happens here. Shenandoah Valley, different geological composition that happens here. But where we are in Madison County, the soil type here is basically heavy clay, which is a lot of what DC is as well. Heavy clay with some quartz in there. Not exactly the soil type that's most prone to expressing minerality, kind of what we talked about with the Edna Bianco last week, right? So the question became, how does salinity get into this wine, right? What makes this wine come out savory and salty and all of that? And that's essentially what we're going to talk about today. And it actually kind of wraps up everything that I've been thinking about. After spending last 4 weeks doing a little more deep dive and research, kind of my thinking and currently where my kind of a thinking is landed around this concept of salt or salinity in wine. So I think this is actually the perfect wine to kind of wrap it all up with, which we'll get into that once we start talking about the winemaking and all of that. And as per usual, we'll do that at the end after we've tasted the wine, rather than right now. So let's talk about who makes this wine. So by the way, if you've never been to Early Mountain Vineyards, I highly recommend you check them out. They're, like I mentioned, they're in Madison, Virginia, which is also in namesake county, Madison County. It's about 45 minutes north of Charlottesville. Beautiful property. There's a lot of weddings and things that happen. It typically goes into all of that. But it is also a legit winery. They have their own estate vineyards, as well as a partner with a lot of growers around there. That's also where I worked my harvest in 2019 with these two. So the gentleman on the right, first, let me talk about the gentleman on the right. His name is Ben. He's no longer with the Early Mountain Vineyards, but he was the founding winemaker, got hired in 2014, and then he left in 2022 to start his own uh, project called Commonwealth Custom Crush in Waynesboro, Virginia. In my opinion, he's the most exciting winemaker in Virginia right now. He's a bit of a luminary, and this is the guy that I did my harvest under. At the time, in 2019, he was a head winemaker, and at the time, Maya on the left here was an assistant winemaker, Maya Hood White, and she's now the head winemaker, and she took over after Ben left as a head winemaker of the Early Mountain Vineyard. And even from the very first time I met her, I could tell that she was very serious. She was very talented and knowledgeable. Also very, very generous with sharing her knowledge and time as well. But yeah, so what you're looking at here is Ben, kind of her mentor, and then as well as Maya, who is now the winemaker, who is the one who made this wine that we're drinking today. So Maya was born in California, in Santa Barbara, Central California area. Later came to Virginia to study mathematics at Virginia Tech and worked in engineering, then realized that she wanted to do something more, hands-on, outdoors, and kind of chemistry driven. So that essentially led her to earn a MS in viticulture and enology from UC Davis. So she went back to California, went to UC Davis, got her enology degree, and then she actually did a research paper very similar to what we're talking about, which is wine sensory science in her dissertation research, particularly around nuclearization of sparkling wine. So she's quite, she's a very, very kind of a scientific in her approach to wine. As somebody who went to UC Davis. UC Davis is kind of an angle to winemaking. It's very, very kind of lab-driven and scientific. So that's her background in terms of wine. But then she joined Early Mountain in 2014, first moving through vineyards and technical roles, including vineyard manager and enologist, then associate winemaker and viticulturist before being promoted to a winemaker in 2022, like I mentioned. So this is pretty important, the fact that she's also a head viticulturist, which is the same role that Ben had, which is that, she's not only just making decisions in the cellar, but she's also thinking about the wine from the vine all the way to the bottle. So she makes a lot of decisions around actual viticulture and how to grow grapes as well. Stylistically, just like her predecessor, Ben, she's known for kind of a low innovation winemaking, site-driven wines, which is exactly the kind of lens you want for the wines like this, that what we have today. So rather than forcing Virginia wines into this kind of either, I think it's kind of true, whether it's Virginia or anywhere else in America. I think a lot of people try to copy either California or European kind of custom or European style, right? Even, it happens in Virginia as well, like not only California, but like a lot of the Bordeaux blends here. We try to grow Cabernet and Merlot and Petit Verdot and all of that in Virginia and try to make it as close to quote unquote Bordeaux as possible. But her work is about figuring out what grows best in Virginia, and then just kind of let the grapes do what it does and just make the wines that only Virginia can make. So high acid whites like Petit Manseng is what we have today. Texture blends, mountain fruit, the wines that feel fresh instead of kind of overworked in the cellar. And those are all the kind of things that what attracted me to doing the harvest at Early Mountain. And it continues to be the kind of style that Maya, now that she's a head winemaker, she's bringing over. She was also, I just learned this today, that she was also nominated for Wine Enthusiast 2024 Wine Star Winemaker of the Year. So yeah, she's definitely someone to keep your eye out on. And if you guys ever end up going to Early Mountain, let me know. I may be able to introduce you to Maya, and I may be able to get you maybe tour of their cellar, which is exactly what this pictures taken. I know exactly where this is. Do all of that. So, by the way, so what was interesting about this one? So I haven't tasted this wine in a few years, but this used to be Five Forks. It used to be one of my favorite wines that they made. I also love Petit Manseng in general, but I also particularly love Petit Manseng from Virginia. I think it is the most promising grape variety of Virginia. And a lot of that is influenced by the kind of seminal work by Ben and all the winemakers to follow now. And they're doing a lot of people are experimenting with Petit Manseng in Virginia now. And Ben is a huge believer in Petit Manseng in Virginia, and he has influenced many other winemakers. And I'm one of them that was a kind of a disciple or believer of his belief system as well. But this wine actually changed. So when Ben was here, this used to be much more aged, a lot more neutral oak, but a lot more oak aging. It was much heavier, much more reserved, higher priced kind of wine. But when Maya took over, she actually, and then it used to be a lot more varietally dominant by Petit Manseng. I think some vintages, I think it was 100% varietal Petit Manseng when Ben was making Five Forks. But it's or it was a lot more Petit Manseng dominant. It was never varietally Petit Manseng because the name Five Forks comes from the fact that there are 5 different grape varieties in here. But when Maya took over, she actually turned this into much brighter, much lighter, fresher kind of style. So less aging on the wine, more of other Sauvignon Blanc particularly, but other varieties kind of coming in, not just so heavily on Petit Manseng. And I actually think the wine is better. Don't tell Ben that I said this, but I actually think this wine is better for it because it kind of lifts up the wine. It's not as it's much more approachable, and that also has brought down the cost of the wine. So it's a lot more entry level, a lot more approachable in terms of price point, but stylistically also, I just think the wine tastes better now. So I'm happy to be featuring this this year. Anyways, so let's talk about what this wine is. So this is a 74% Petit Manseng, 16% Sauvignon Blanc, 6% Pinot Gris, 4% Malvasia Bianca. Malvasia does see a little bit of skin contact, so there's a touch of skin contact in here. And in case you are not familiar with the Petit Manseng, this is what it looks like. So most promising grape variety coming out of Virginia, like I mentioned. Petit Manseng is a white grape variety from southwest of France. So it's just on the eastern side. This is actually one of the stop points that I'm making on this trip after the cycling trip. Jurançon is where this grape variety is from in France. But it actually became one of Virginia's kind of a secret weapon, again, with the seminal work by some people like Ben Jordan, the early kind of adopters of this, believers of this grape variety in Virginia. The grape, as you can see, the grape has a tiny little, very thick-skinned berries, loose clusters, and a stubborn ability to kind of hold on to screaming acidity, even when it gets very ripe. In fact, in Europe, a lot of Petit Manseng or Jurançon is made into kind of it's a late harvest, almost like a dessert-like with a lot of residual sugar left, just because it naturally develops this high sugar as well as high acidity, which is a great candidate for a dessert wine, to making dessert wine. But here in Virginia, as well as in Jurançon, as well as Jurançon Sec, which is that they're actually fermenting out completely dry. But no matter how ripe this gets, and no matter despite the fact that it naturally has a very high sugar, it has this incredible acidity. And what that means is it's actually a perfect grape to grow here in places like Virginia, where it's warm and humid, like I mentioned, like we know, right? A lot of white grapes can lose freshness because it loses acidity, because it gets too hot, or it gets bullied by rot because, again, it's very humid. But because it is loose, as you can see in this picture, it's very loosely kind of bunched, so better circulation, less prone to rot, and naturally just really high in acid despite it being warm and ripe. So it is kind of a perfect grape, honestly, for Virginia climate. Flavor-wise, it can get very intensely aromatic. I mean, think like all the tropical fruits like pineapple, mango, citrus peel, honey, flowers, things like that. But like I mentioned, these are very thick skinned berries. So it has a very high skin to juice ratio, which means a high phenolics to juice ratio. So naturally high in phenolics, and then a lot of times it's Jurançon, that phenolics is what gives Jurançon some grip, especially if there's a little bit of a skin contact. And then sometimes you can get that kind of a pithy, the citrusy, pithy kind of a thing that we talked about. So yeah, this is a grape that keep your eye out for Petit Manseng from Virginia, because I think this is gonna continue to do well, and it's really showing some incredible promise. But anyway, so it's a mixture of those five grapes: Petit Manseng, Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, and Malvasia Bianca. And those are all fermented and aged in 9 months in neutral French and acacia barrels and in stainless steel. So Petit Manseng is fermented and aged in barrels, and then the rest is done in stainless steel. So Petit Manseng, like I mentioned, just that acid is so high. If you leave it alone, if you did it in stainless steel, it would be so sharp. So doing it in barrels kind of rounds out some of the sharp edges, and then the rest is done in stainless steel, just to kind of give it more freshness, more acid, and the kind of that sharpness without being too sharp. And then, like I mentioned, the Malvasia Bianca does get a little bit of skin contact, so there's a little bit of a phenolics that are coming in also on top of the high phenolics that you naturally get from blanking on the name, Petit Manseng. It is ambient and cultured yeast, so there is a little bit of pitched yeast here. So technically, it's not a quote unquote natural wine, but I love the fact that they are actually transparent about it. And I've had this discussion with Ben many times, and Ben is somebody who's all about lower minimal intervention, but he's not dogmatic about it. It's like if I have to get the wine across the line, then I'm not shy about using it, but they're using cultured yeast. But at the end of the day, he's very transparent, and I think that's what it matters. At the end of the day, I just want winemakers to disclose what they put into their wine and what they make their wine in, and we as consumers can make a decision about whether we want to consume that or not. But the fact that they actually put it in the text sheet that it is both ambient and cultured yeast, I appreciate that. They do put all their wines through lab tests. They do submit it to labs. So we do actually have a pretty good technical data. So just to give you some of that information. So pH here is 3.25. Total titratable acid is 7.4 grams per liter here. And the residual sugar here is 2.29 grams per liter. So to help you calibrate your senses, this is what 2.29 grams per liter tastes like on your palate whenever you are trying to detect residual sugar on wine. It's pretty much nothing. 2.29 is nothing. Most human beings can't detect anything under like 5 grams per liter. So we're in the bone dry territory. All right. Any questions about any of that before moving to the tasting? And then I'll go over the final kind of salt thing and then try to wrap up the salt box, hopefully. Any questions? Cool. Let's taste the wine. Who wants to take the appearance? Someone.
I do.
All right.
I cheated though.
What do you mean?
I had a glass of this wine last week at the bar.
Okay.
and I ordered it knowing it was early mountain, and I tasted it, and I was like, you know what? I bet this is the one we're trying next week. So I did some pre-studying.
All right, excellent.
Uh, Not that that means I'm going to be any good at it, but uh, I will call this one clear un.
This one is clear.
And I don't know. I feel like I would call this medium.
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh, I guess we would say kind of looks like straw to me. But I guess because it's somewhere between lemon and gold.
yeah, I do definitely do see some gold color on here. Um, so yeah, I would call this about like, I don't know, medium minus gold, maybe somewhere between pale and medium gold is what I would call this. Some of the phenolics, some of the barrel aging is what essentially what brings out that kind of like the kind of gold color on it. Any other observations?
I don't think I have any other observations.
Yeah, no bubbles, no sediment in mine. Yeah, looks pretty clear.
Very clear.
I do know, unless this didn't say in the text sheet, and I haven't confirmed, I have not asked Maya, but if everything is consistent from when I was there in 2019, it's a lot of early mountains wines. They don't get fined, but they do see some bentonite clay filtering. So there's some light filtering, but nothing, no finding. All right, you get to pick the next person for the news.
Does anyone want to volunteer? Charles, you're looking like deep in your heart you want to volunteer, even though your mouth isn't saying it. Am I right? Did I read that correctly?
Sure. I opened the wine 30 seconds ago. We're at a different house. Sure. Yeah, let's do it. What are we doing? Nose?
Nose, yeah.
Okay, nose. Wine's clean. No faults.
What is sound?
Mine might be a little cold. I'm getting medium intensity. I would wonder whether if it weren't a little too cold, it might be on the verge of medium plus, but I'm going to call medium.
I'm like here, so that's like 2 inches. So I'm gonna call this medium plus. But yeah, it's probably if you just pull that out, it's probably the temperature.
Yeah, it's been in the fridge a few hours, and it just got pulled out of the fridge 30 seconds ago. So that bodes well for what I'll pick up on the nose. I get something floral, kind of like I don't know, kind of a honeysuckle-y type of nose, honeysuckle and like white flower blossom kind of thing.
Yeah, totally.
Not really green fruit.
Yep, me neither.
But lots of citrus fruit, lemon.
Yep.
Like
also
lemon,
like pithy lemon.
Yeah, lemon juice, lemon pith. Interestingly, even though the wine is salty, I'm not getting like salted lemon. It's not quite there, but like all the parts of the lemon.
Yep.
Not really any stone fruit for me.
Yeah, me neither. I'm not getting much stone fruit. Any tropical?
You know, not really. Again, this wine might be a little cold, a little closed. If you were to tell me there was some like a tropical note on a more open wine, like an unripe pineapple or something.
Yeah, I get a touch of pineapple. I get a touch of like passion fruit. I get some tropical notes here. Nothing crazy though. I mean, it's not like, yeah, it's not over the top, but I do get a touch of this right here.
Yeah.
I can see it. No red fruit, no black.
No red, no black, no dried cooked fruit. Herbaceous and herbal.
Wait, hold on. Before you get the nature of the fruit?
I would say the nature of the fruit is just like perfectly ripe, not overripe, not underripe, except for the tropical fruit. It's probably underripe.
Yeah, no, very, very ripe.
But it's like it's a
Yep,
very fresh wine, perfect peak of ripeness of the fruit.
agreed. Herbaceous, herbal.
There's something there. I don't know if I'll be able to pick it out with this. It's there is something there.
Totally. To me, passion fruit always has a element of a little bit of this kind of like a greenness, kind of a herbaceous herbal kind of a thing, and I get some of that here, and maybe that's why it's making me think passion fruit up here. But yeah, there's definitely like a touch of green, touch of like a savoriness, and honestly, I think it's the Sauvignon Blanc that's doing it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that.
It's like actually, it's almost a little. There is a little bit of green bell pepper. Like there's a bell peppery Pyrazini note in here. It's for sure. It's interesting because I don't like too much of that, and I actually don't like Sauvignon Blanc when it's too grassy because it reads like asparagus. Like regular grass reads like asparagus to me, but this is like really subtle.
Yeah, exactly. Very subtle, just like a touch of that kind of a grassy green herbaceousness. Any spice, any minerality?
Minerality, yes. Spice, no. Yeah, it's got a stony quality.
Yeah, it's not like I get a little bit like wet stone.
Stone thing. Which, by the way, can I tell you, like the specificity of the other categories, and then one of the categories is wet stones. Like, this is like for morons. Like, it's like, oh, I'm getting quince. And like, oh, I got wet stones. It's like the category for dumbasses. Like it's like the specificity goes away and gives way to just like I smell rocks. It's like okay, good job. That's you really did it. But that's where I am. So I smell wet rocks. That's what I smell.
I mean, I do think like wet rocks is very different from like dry, like a powdery rocks.
Yeah,
like
no, for sure.
but yes, nonetheless. It's all-encompassing moist stones.
It's interesting that dry rocks is not one of the categories, right?
Right. Secondary?
Right.
Secondary, tertiary?
I didn't hear anything about how this wine is made, but I don't have any, certainly no tertiary, but I don't think any dominant secondary notes either.
Yeah. There's no new oak on this whatsoever. The Petit Manseng is fermented and aged in neutral barrels. But, and then all the rest of the wines. So the Petit Manseng is like a 70-some percent, 74%, I think I said. And then the rest is done in stainless steel. But yeah.
It's done in the Petit Manseng's in neutral oak and the Sauvignon Blanc's in stainless steel.
Exactly. Okay. Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, Malvasia Bianca, they're all done in stainless steel. Secondary, no tertiary, makes sense. Nope. I do get, this is not a function of a bottle age honey, but like there's some honeyness here that maybe like earlier when we're talking about floor, that kind of blossomy thing that I was telling you about, maybe that's kind of where I was getting at, but there's some honeyed kind of a nature to it for me.
Yeah.
Nectary, like a nectar of the fruit, a nectar of the flower kind of a thing. Cool. Excellent. You get to pick the next person for the palate.
Well, you can pick the only person on camera. Joe, are you guys up for doing palate?
Sure.
So like instead of saying Joe K, it should say Joe and. You guys are consistently well. Anyway,
we just discussed updating my profile.
I feel like I'm the last to know, but it seems like time to delete the K.
Agreed. So where are we?
Palate.
Palate dry. Oh.
Like I said, this is 2.26 grams per liter. We're in the bone dry territory here.
Yeah. So this is. I
think that there's sweet because of a lot of fruit, but there's no sugar on this. Acidity.
The acidity is ripping on this. I put it in the Jolly Rancher territory. I don't know if that's on the scale, but I would go maybe to high. It's just
Yeah, this is.
well, though.
I'm gonna put this in high acidity as well. It's ripping.
Yeah, but it's
The
not.
fact that
It's not out of balance though.
Yeah, the fact that we were talking so much about like how ripe a blossom, flowers, and then like the tropical fruit and honey note and all of that, and the really fresh and really ripe. But the fact that this acid is like this high, again, this is what Petit Manseng does. It's like he's able to create these kind of really ripeness um, and flavors, and as well as the actual sugar development, but keeps the acid. So high acid for sure. Tannin, we don't have to talk about it, but I actually do want you guys to feel for tannin. Do you guys get any grip on this?
I wouldn't get it if you hadn't suggested it. So
Yeah, I mean it's very, very low. It's just like a little bit of texture to this one. There's a touch of a skin contact in the Malvasia Bianca. And again, it may be like you were saying, Joe, like it may be just power of suggestion because I just know that. Just knowing that Malvasia Bianca has a touch of skin contact. I mean, it's only, even though it's only like 5% or something. And then the Petit Manseng is naturally just kind of a high in phenolic. I feel like there's a little bit of texture. I wouldn't even go, like, I would definitely call this low. I wouldn't even go to medium minus. But if anything, if I were to even call anything on it, but it's not just a silky smooth wine. There's like a little bit of a grip. There's a little bit of phenolic texture. Alcohol.
I call it medium.
Yeah, what do you think the percentage is?
I don't. This is my. I can never quite pick the alcohol on these.
I'm gonna guess.
13 and a half.
God,
That's my guess. Oh wait.
Yeah, alcohol's 13. It's 13.5. So a little bit higher in alcohol makes sense. Warm place, grape variety naturally just keeps sugar that's high in sugar. So the fact that they're keeping it at 13.5% is actually, which is fantastic, which is good. So yeah, this is right on the medium, high in the medium. But yeah, definitely still in the medium territory. Body.
Alcohol is kind of like for a white, like a medium bodied white.
For sure. Got a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
Both the natural sugar, high sugar, because of Petit Manseng, got 13.5, as well as a little bit of phenolic grip. I'm gonna call this at least medium, if not moving on to a medium plus. But high in the medium is probably what I call this. So I'll still call this about medium, but yeah, it's definitely got some weight on it for sure. Musu, we don't have to talk about flavor intensity.
I would call this medium plus.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Really expressive.
Hey.
Yeah, everything in there is.
Only a tiny bit left. So,
yeah, it's not shy at all. All right.
I go with a long finish on this.
Before we get to the finish, do you agree with everything that Charles called out? Is there anything else that sticks out to you?
I think the tropical fruit is a lot riper and more pronounced. But
wait, say that again?
I think the tropical fruit's a lot riper and more pronounced.
Yeah.
But my bottle's been open a lot longer than Charles. Yeah,
agreed.
I get a lot of like just a lot more just straight like ripe, fresh pineapple.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually get the Charles was calling out kind of unripe pineapple, but I think all through the fruit, all through and the flower, everything is pretty ripe all the way across. And of course, you can't smell salinity obviously because of the preserved lemon, but yeah, there's definitely some of that kind of a savory salinity thing. It does not stick out as much as like some of that like Bianco that we had, probably because of this that really ripe flowers and fruits and all the things that we had. But that's the only thing additionally that I get besides what I smell. But I'm confirming everything that Charles called out on the nose.
And I would add some white pepper on it too.
White pepper, okay. And the finish. How long is the finish?
My last sip, I guess.
Yeah,
It's got some.
going.
It's got some time. I call this medium plus.
Yeah, I'm gonna call this like a medium plus as well in the finish. And honestly, now that I'm actually tasting again, there are two things that I just pour a new glass. One, I get a little bit of trapped CO2. There's a little bit of spritz that's coming out. It's probably all that stainless steel fruit. And then two, that initial kind of piercing, that grassy kind of a thing, I think is a lot more apparent on the palate than it is on the nose. Not to the point where like it is dominant, but it's actually really nice layer underneath all that really ripe fruit, just to have that little bit of savory edge. But I do get a little more of this kind of herbaceous nature of this wine. All right, bring it home for us. How good is this wine? Justify it, and would you age it?
I think this is the best Virginia white wine I've ever had.
You think it's the what?
Best white Virginia wine I've ever had.
All right, the team and sen, baby.
Really, I'd had some early mountains. I went there years ago, and I think I did a tasting. And honestly, I wasn't super impressed.
Okay.
Maybe I had a weird day, but this is great. I really, really like this. I call this very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, we call it's balanced. I mean, that acid is ripping, but honestly, with so much ripe fruit and so much tropic fruit, everything running through, I don't think it's out of out of balance. So I said this is balanced. Intensity wise, we call it medium plus on the nose, medium plus on the palate. So medium plus. Complexity, we call bunch of primary fruit, right? Like flowers, citrus, tropical fruit, some herbaceous, some rocks, salinity, no secondary, no tertiary, but a bunch of stuff. So at least medium, if not moving on to medium plus. And then the length that we call this squarely in medium plus. So when you take advantage of, when you take an average of all of that, we're landing in medium plus. We're going to call this very good. Now, would you age this?
You could age this. Yeah, you could put this down for, I don't know, 4 years.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I don't think it's meant to be aged for a long time. By the way,
with the body and the acid, you could,
yeah, exactly. It's got the acid, it's got the ripping acid, it's got a really good rigid backbone. It's not going to fall apart anytime soon. But and there's Jurançon and Jurançon Sex that have been aged and they age beautifully. But the fact that where this wine is, it's not meant to be aged for long. It's more for the entry, the youthful kind of freshness of the grapes. The screw cap also kind of implies that Maya was thinking that this is just meant to be consumed much earlier than most people think. So, but I don't think it's going to fall apart anytime soon. And the fact that this wine is, I mean, yeah, so 2024, it's got 2 years already. So I say next 4 to 5 years, I think there's no problem. I think this wine is going to drink beautifully over the next 4 to 5 years. And I don't necessarily think, I actually think that having some of the non-fruit savory things added here, I don't think it's going to make this particular wine necessarily more delicious. I think it's going to get in the way of experiencing these really beautiful, fresh, perfectly ripe fruits that are in here. So I say drink it over the next 4 to 5 years, but don't worry about laying it down for a long time. Cool. Any questions? Any comments? Any concerns? Any disagreements? Did you guys like this one? Did anybody not like this one? Sam, Annie, did you guys like this one? Yeah. How many of you are surprised that this is a Virginia wine?
I was nervous because it was a Virginia wine, but I
I wasn't, but only because you've talked about Early Mountain before. And so I was like, this is one of the good ones. But also, one of the wines that we had, gosh, it was a couple of years ago. It was called like Spinning Wheels or something.
Yeah.
And that's like such a good wine. And that's from Virginia. And it stuck with me. I can't remember now the winemaker, But because of
That's
that,
cheap.
huh?
So the guy who sold me this wine, my sales rep, is the guy who made Spinning Me.
Oh,
He
wow.
makes some money.
Okay.
He sells this one.
Yeah, that one's really good. I brought it to Thanksgiving, I want to say 2 Thanksgivings ago, and it was like
Yeah.
such a hit
Yeah.
among a lot of different people. So I do feel like, and then I also think that like while in general I dislike most Virginia wine that I drink, Petit Manseng just works better. So it was interesting for you to hear you talking about like how that's why that is. And I'm not the only person who thinks that, obviously. So I trusted you and you didn't let me down.
Oh, yeah. Virginia, don't sleep on Virginia, especially if it's Petit Manseng from Virginia. I think I honestly don't think like Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, all those Bordeaux varieties that are grown a lot in Virginia. I don't think it is right for that. But the Petit Manseng here does really, really fucking well. So cool.
I feel like the wine almost tastes better than it drinks. Like if you're like thinking about it, it's really cool. And then when I'm drinking it, like a little bit of the bitterness hits more.
There's a touch of
it's like there's a like a grapefruity bitterness just when you're like kind of crushing it. You're like, it's kind of got a bitter aftertaste. Whereas when you're tasting it, you're like, ooh, it's got a long fin, like I'm getting salted pineapple. I feel like when you're like thinking about it, it is almost more satisfying. And some wines are the opposite, right? Like you think about it, you're like, I wish I hadn't thought about that. Now I just need to like drink this wine. So I feel like this almost tastes better than it drinks.
Okay. I'm glad you also brought that up. There is touch of bitterness here, which I did not talk about during tasting, but not overly. But there is if you sit with it, it comes like at the very end of the finish, but there's a touch of bitterness here. So let's play everybody's favorite game. Then I'll try to wrap this up and why I think this wine is salty, and then also how it applies to kind of my current thinking about this idea of solidity. How much do you think this wine is on a retail shelf? How much would you be happy paying for this on a retail shelf? It is a Virginia wine. Virginia wines are rarely cheap. Just because they just haven't reached that, economy of scale. But how much is this? 34, 38, 36, 29, 38, 35. Okay. So that's how much Five Forks used to be. It used to be, cork enclosure. They used to age longer, and it used to be in the mid 30s. Now, Maya, like I said earlier, she kind of brightened this up and made it younger and fresher. It's brought it down more entry point. This on a retail shelf is $26. I think for $26, this is a fantastic deal. I'll drink this all day, every day for $26.
That's surprising and delicious. Also, because I remember it was a year or two ago, I was driving to Virginia and I was like, maybe I'll stop at Early Mountain. And then like the tasting was like $80 or something. And I was like, maybe not. Not that it's not worth it, but like I was with my kids and so it was just not going to be like, I wasn't going to have an $80 experience.
No tasting is worth it at $80.
I also suspect that that's the case, but it made me think that their wine must be super, super expensive. So I'm surprised.
I mean, they have some expensive wines too, but honestly, it's their non-fancy wines I honestly think they do the best. I think it's the most interesting wines from Early Mountain. Because their fancy wines are like the typical Bordeaux blends and all of that. Which is like not
source of my Early Mountain discontent. Maybe I was pissed off about the price or something.
Yeah, I mean, they really position themselves as that kind of like event winery. I mean, they do a lot of weddings, a lot of corporate dinners, corporate events, and
I started wandering around the vineyard and went through like their little chambers down below, and like someone like, what are you doing here? Like, whatever.
Well,
anyway,
next time you go,
but I was like, oh god! Before we opened this, I was like, fuck these guys. But it was actually.
Joe's playing like a Melissa McCarthy in the movie Spy, just like like, Oh, I'm just a dumbass wandering around the basement of these vineyards. Why shouldn't I be here?
Oh, Hasser.
All right. Any questions about any of that before I kind of get into the nerd side of this one? Okay. So I actually initially this was the kind of a shocker, right? This was the kind of curveball where I wasn't thinking about it. Peter, the guy who makes spinning wheel, he was the one who was talking to me about it. He's like, dude, I think there's certain grape varieties that really express itself better for salinity. And I think Petit Manseng is one of them. And so we got into this conversation. I tasted this wine and then did have that kind of salty edge to it. And I was like, why? How this happened? Not near the ocean, no real soil type to talk about. The winemaking here, there's no huge lees aging here. Like, how does this become to that? And I actually think this may be the kind of the most important wine, even though it started off as a kind of a weird curveball. But I actually think that this is the most important wine in our salt box because it kind of destroyed this idea, the earlier kind of very simplistic idea of what we thought, right? You do this one thing, and that's what causes salt in wine. You do lees aging, it's salty. You plant it across or next to the coast, it's salty, right? You plant it on a certain soil type, like a volcanic soil type, then it's salty, right? But it kind of destroyed this idea that salty is not any of that, really. There's no Atlantic spray here, right? No soil type. We're in Virginia. So what we do have here is Petit Manseng, and we've been talking about acidity, right? This idea of acidity being almost a prerequisite for salt to exist in wine. So what we do have here is Petit Manseng, which has a screaming, just natural acidity, one of the most naturally acidic grapes that grow here in Virginia. And that acidity makes us kind of salivate and crazy, right? And then has some phenolic bitterness, not only from the actual Petit Manseng but also a little bit of skin contact from Malvasia Bianca. So we got phenolic bitterness, the savory edge, the texture. Then you throw in another layer of Sauvignon Blanc on top of it, which has that kind of like herbal, that piercing, grassy thing that we're talking about, the citrus character and all of that. And then the fermentation compound, we talked about succinic acid, which is a naturally occurring substance during fermentation that to human palate expresses itself as kind of salty, bitter, and all of that. So when you assemble all of that, is essentially how our sensory, our tongue and sensory perception perceives it as quote unquote savory, salty. But this wine is not actually salty, right? There's no sodium chloride in it. And this goes back to, again, what we were talking about last week, which is, this is what the Italians would call sapidity or sapidità. Savory, kind of dry, mouth-watering, almost kind of salty without necessarily containing actual sodium chloride. So, and that's exactly what this is, I think. The Petit Manseng's freakishly persistent acidity, Sauvignon Blanc's freshness, and then the piercing kind of herbaceousness, savory, phenolic grip, dry finish, kind of potentially bitter, salty fermentation compounds. All of that is essentially what lands in what we call sapidity. So my thinking around all this as the final wine of the month is that this kind of sums up what, now that I've spent the last 4 weeks kind of doing different parts of research around salinity. So what I think is, I think I'm actually much more closely aligned with what the Italians were talking about, this idea of sapidity, not saltiness. Maybe I should start calling it, this wine is sapid, not salty. Because now I'm a believer that salinity isn't a one thing. It is actually several different factors, all the things I mentioned, the acid, phenolic, the soil, not necessarily the soil itself, but the different soil influencing growing conditions differently. The wine making obviously matters, right? Like we were both talking about lees aging, succinic acid, and all of that. So all these little different factors are what essentially leads up to what we call, it gives us a savory experience in wine. So it's not this neatly easy path of being able to predict that you do this one thing that your wine will turn salty. It's more of you gotta match all these different factors. There are different levers that you have to pull in order to get to this place where our body, our human palate, expresses or interprets that wine as savory. So, and I think this is that perfect example of all those levers being pulled at the right amount at the right time for it to come at as salty. Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense why this wine would become salty. All the things that we talked about, the first 3 weeks, the soil, the lees aging, the proximity to a coast, none of that exists here. Yet there's very clear salinity here. So only thing I can explain to you, okay, only thing that makes sense to me is that all the things that we kind of talked about is more of that kind of what Italians talk about, that sapidità is essentially what makes wine salty for us. So after 4 weeks of nerdery, that's where I've landed. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And if it doesn't, I apologize. But it makes sense to me. But cool. Any questions? Anything else about this week's wine or any other week's wine, or the idea of that sapidity or sapidità in wine? Cool. Did you guys have a favorite? 2 questions. 1, did you guys have a favorite wine out of this month? 2, what did you think about the kind of a theme concept of something like Saltbox, where it's like, right, it's very nerdy. It's like going into like one topic, and at the end, I may or may not have a very clear answer for you. It's also like just kind of researching through time, through the month, I myself. So what do you, was that enjoyable for you guys, or was it more confusing, or yeah?
I liked the concept of the theme, but I also just liked the theme, period, because I like wines with salinity or sapidity.
Yeah.
So I was just like, let's do Saltbox ×2.
Yeah.
And then, but I also, you know that I like the nerdy stuff. But then my favorites were first and fourth. I like the Col Fondo at the beginning.
Yeah.
I really like this too. But I liked all of them. They were all delicious and sapid.
Okay, you picking Virginia as your favorite.
I know, shocking, shocking.
Anyone else?
I'm not a huge like salinity and wine person, I feel like, but I really do enjoy the like kind of I've done a lot of research and let me like break down like what I found. I don't know. I found that like the nerdy details aspect really interesting.
Okay.
I think week 2, I forget what wine it was, but I remember it was my favorite.
Albariño.
Probably second, but yeah, that was my favorite one in the month.
Yeah, the Albariño is very good. I liked all the wines this month, honestly. But yeah, the Albariño is really good.
Yeah, I really like the idea of this month. I thought it was cool. It's fun. I think it's fun, and it sounds like you're kind of doing something similar next month, where you're rather than doing like a regional walk around, you're kind of taking one place and just changing one variable. Like we're just going to do a different grade. I think that's a lot of fun. A lot of really interesting kind of ideas.
What other concepts can you do like that?
I mean, it could be exploration of acid, could be exploration of different soil types.
You should do rock box.
Could be this is going to be your least favorite box of all time, but like a piercing, like the herbaceous, like a savory side of wine.
I'm good with
whether that comes through the natural piercing like Sauvignon Blanc, or like cluster stem inclusion, basically like the vegetal part of the vin, right? How do you express like the savory side of the wine? So.
I feel like it would be fun to know the difference between herbal and herbaceous, which I mean, in theory I do, but in practice, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, that's fun. I think those are cool ideas.
Love it. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes obviously I get nerdy about this stuff, and I know some of you guys are quite nerdy about it, but like sometimes being too nerdy, like I don't know when it's too nerdy. You know what I mean? Like that was like my hesitation for a second when I was putting this box together. I'm like, is this too nerdy? Like, are people gonna be like, this is too much?
I
Yeah.
think we're pretty nerdy, and I think the people who aren't nerdy don't join the calls and don't listen to the recordings.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's a lot of people in the wine club who are not nerdy, who are just like, just give me delicious wine and
Yeah.
whatever. But they're also not calling in anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I would say from me, the line is if the wine's not delicious, it would have to be like really interesting to be
Right.
worth it. But like the wines are all still tasty. You could,
Yeah.
you could like some and like some more, but you're not giving us anything that's like, you might not even like this wine at all. It's just really culturally
Right.
significant. It's like, okay, well, fair enough.
No, never.
It's like the equivalent of like DC has a lot of museums, right? You have to have a special day to be like, we're going to the Holocaust Museum today. Like, it's like, okay, like it's culturally significant. It's really important. It's important that you go there. People need to understand it. It's not like a laugh, right? It's not a fun time to go. It's like this. I'm glad I went, and I feel really sad. You're not giving us those wines, right? Like the wines where you're like, I'm doing this just because I feel like I owe it to my study of this thing to do it. Like, if you don't give us the wines that suck, well, I think it's not too nerdy.
No, I mean, first and foremost, I think wine should be about joy. And to me, if it's like if it's not delicious, then I don't think just talking about intellectual part of wine is fun. Like it's gotta be delicious and enjoyable. So
I've got some wines in the fridge at home that are intellectual only, and
100%. Yeah,
I don't have anybody to open them with because I don't really want to drink them that bad.
Yeah, there's the purely cerebral wines. You're like,
yeah,
I'm not sure if I like this or not, but like it's interesting.
Yeah, in case anybody wants to come over to my house and have the last of 3 bottles of Italian orange wine grown on grapes that are grown on like a tree trellis system that honestly is not super delicious. You're like, oh, I respect the effort that went into this, but like, can I not have to drink it? It's interesting and not that good.
Yeah, true. Allison, I just saw no Brett, no VA month. I mean, that's something too. I also thought about like a faulty box, like a fault box.
Listen, do that, but just let me know I'm skipping that one.
Well, like I'm not gonna go as far as like full on faulty or like holy shit, this is fucked, but more of like this is very bready wine, but still delicious on its own. Very like maybe VA peaks, but like it lifts up the fruit. Like there's a reason.
I'm gonna skip that month. Skip that month. Unless you can be like, no, Allison, you're gonna enjoy yourself, which I don't think you can. I'm gonna skip that month. You can do. I know there are people in this wine club who like that kind of thing.
You've had some bready ones that you've liked. I remember.
Maybe like a couple, but not very many.
Hey, Woong, can I make a request for a nerdy wine month? Can you do something with like different types of like all high acid wines, but like different types of acid?
Oh, so like a full
malic acid, lactic acid, like
100% mallow.
Yeah, like these are all like medium plus to high acidity, but like the acid is totally different. Because I feel like if there's anything this wine club does specifically, it's super high acid.
Yeah,
you'd be like, these are all super high acid, but they're all different acid.
Okay. Acid box, and then I throw in a little sheet of.
Just call it acid trip.
Yeah.
Call it acid trip month.
Yeah, take that little piece of a stamp that I'm going to include in each box. Put it behind your tongue if you dare.
Yeah, I don't dare.
Yeah.
Did we do a volcano month?
We did do a volcanic box. Yeah, volcanic. Yeah, so we did. Cool.
I will say I thought this was a really fun month. That was great.
Cool.
10 out of 10. Would recommend.
Glad you all liked it. Yeah, it was the most amount of research or most amount of research I've read in a long time. Wine research I've read. It's kind of fun.
Did you have fun with it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's just an idea. It's something that I've been thinking about for a long time and kind of doing some preliminary, just kind of internet research. And this was just kind of excuse for me to go even deeper to actually look up papers and read the papers and all of that.
Did you contact, like, have you ever like contacted like UC Davis? I feel like if you like wrote them an email and you're like, we had a whole month of like salty wines and talking about like all the research you've done, like I read this and this and this, like you'd be like, do you have anybody who's like publishing on this? Or like,
Yeah.
I think they'd probably be like, yeah, we have a bunch of nerds over here who are like working on this stuff. You might actually like get a cool response of like, yeah, we have a woman who's like doing her PhD on sapidity in wines. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that's for sure.
When you get back from your bike ride, we can.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it, honestly. I didn't even think to even. That's an excellent idea. I don't know why I didn't think to even reach out to UC Davis. Probably would have saved me a lot of time.
So like we figured this out years ago. It was so boring that we didn't publish it. Who gives a shit? No one knows what it means anyway. Yeah, this was cool, man. I actually have to say, I thought these wines were like the Albarino. If you needed a house white that was like going to pair with food,
perfect summer.
That's it. Or for seafood, like it goes with so much stuff, right? Like that's a really easy wine to pour. So it's kind of like when you go to a restaurant and they recommend Chablis, but Chablis is often like not quite as high acid and it has more oak influence. It makes it like less easy to pair with food. Like it pairs great with some food, but that Albarino, like you could honestly pair that with pretty much anything on the table. It's like completely easy to do.
I feel like it's a good crowd pleasing wine too. It's just like whether you are like a wine nerd or just like everyday, just kind of like a drink wine. I feel like that wine kind of hits both audience. But yeah, I'm actually really enjoying this one. I just drank a glass real quickly, but the point is fucking delicious.
It is. It's really nice. I can't believe it's $20. I can't believe it's $26.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Anyway, we stopped the recording.